In this video, we're going to break down what Swift is, how it works, and how they are partnering with blockchain companies and their solutions to really improve the payment system globally. All right. So we've seen Swift partner with Chainlink. They've announced it with Hedera. There's been a lot of speculation over the years that they're partnered with Ripple potentially, or maybe Corda, and that they would utilize XRP as a settlement mechanism for real-time international cross-border payments. But we're going to break it down in this video, how that would actually work, why you might need multiple partners to be able to fulfill on this use case, and how that would actually work with Swift today. So what is Swift? Swift is a messaging layer. They don't actually settle payments. Okay, so they use ISO 20022 as a messaging standard globally between all of their counterparties that they're working with. They have 11,000 institutions, banks, enterprises, other people that they're partnering with globally to be able to settle cross-border payments, securities transactions, and other financial transactions with this messaging layer that they provide. So they're pretty much it. Like they are the player. You've got some people that have come to market for China and Russia and chips, which are competing against Swift, but the majority of the financial institutions globally are still going to use Swift. Now, there are competitors. RippleNet has come to market. They use XRP to settle. Potentially, they have other ways to be able to settle fiat transactions. They have that messaging component built in. They're a direct competitor to Swift. And Brad Garlinghouse has been on stage with Swift at multiple occasions talking about how they could potentially partner or how they could use that technology. But Swift really only has two options at the end of the day for the settlement component of this. They could work with Corda, who we will break down all of the things that's required for Swift to be able to settle instantly. Corda's a pretty good contender for that. Or they could use RippleNet and partner directly with Ripple, which seems like a competitor. Or maybe they adopt different components of each one of these blockchains in order to be able to settle real time in their own capacity, right? And that's really kind of where the partnerships, I think, are coming from. They've chosen maybe that third option. So for them to actually do that, what does it look like? Well, you need a settlement layer. We talked about that. You got XRP. They could facilitate that either through Corda or through RippleNet, or if they were to run a node on the network and build in these other components, they might be able to use it in that capacity. You need some smart contract logic, which doesn't currently exist on the XRPL, and again, would be great if they use Hedera in this capacity or Corda. Both of those have smart contract capability. Chainlink, not so much. We do have, Hooks sidechain and the EVM sidechain on the XRPL. Hooks could be migrated to the mainnet, and it would facilitate that component. They're lightweight smart contracts, similar to like Soroban on Hyperledger, but that doesn't currently exist. So again, you would probably need Hedera partnered with the XRPL and Chainlink, or, again, that's one option. You could use Corda, which is another. You need compliance, AML, KYC, OFAC, BIS, accreditation for securities transactions. Corda has all of that built in. Hedera currently has this partially through custom token policies. And the XRPL also will have this, but it's not quite available yet through the credentials amendment that's currently been proposed and is being voted on. Chainlink doesn't have that. Now, the privacy component's a big deal for me. I'm highly confident that banks' transactions probably don't want to be moving over a public ledger. And again, so this is why it makes sense, again, for Corda versus them moving these transactions and data over public networks like the XRPL, Hashgraph, and Chainlink. However, you could, have privatized versions of these, or maybe subnets, or other things that would allow for these transactions to remain private between counterparties. So Hedera, again, has a public and private ledger data sharing component. And so maybe that's how Hedera works in competition to Corda in this capacity. Next, you're going to need price oracles and market data. Well, Chainlink definitely does that. You got the XRPL is interoperable with that through XLS40D. They did implement price oracles on chain. And then you also have interoperability for Chainlink in that capacity with Hedera for price feeds as well. Now, this is where Corda is it is deficient. It doesn't have an external component that would allow for price feeds to move in for security transactions. So they would need to announce some interoperability with Chainlink or another oracle to be able to fulfill in that specific spot. Cross-chain interoperability. Don't really need that for Corda because it's an all-in-one solution, but you would need that for the XRPL and Hedera and Chainlink. Their CCIP would be able to provide that for the connection between the two blockchains and passing data back and forth to be able to facilitate these transactions. I've had some people reach out and say that, CCIP would just facilitate all of this. You don't have smart contract capability directly native on Chainlink's network. And for the settlement component, it's really crude. It is not meant to function that way. So you need these other two networks to be able to facilitate that. Now, institutional adoption. We've already seen this across all of these, right? You've got multiple banks that are on Hedera's council. Ripple has integrated RippleNet and their services and products with banks globally. Corda has already been working with central banks and other institutions globally. And Chainlink is the leading enterprise oracle for basically all applications, price feeds, and anything that would be required in this application. So all of these fit the mold on that piece. You need regulatory alignment is another component. Corda was designed with that in mind. Like they literally, the banks that funded that corporation and that software and the development of that literally built it for regulatory compliance. Hedera, similar. So Hedera has a really strong focus on the regulatory component. Swift would use Hedera for recording tokenized securities, asset registrations, or their consensus timestamp, all using tokenized assets, their high-speed consensus, and the compliance features that are built into that network. Those would be all the things that would be required, and kind of a breakdown of each one of these blockchains and how they would fit in each one of these pieces. And you can kind of see that the Corda is really the leader here for an institutional enterprise application, and the adoption for Swift to be able to partner with them, to be able to settle international remittance through XRP, because it was designed with all of these features in mind to be able to settle this. But again, because of the announcements of the partnerships that they have with Hedera, with Chainlink, and potentially with XRP and Ripple, there was Watcher Gurus what put out the other day that they were in negotiations for a portion of the escrow to be able to provide liquidity and for settlement for, cross-border payments and transactions. But then they were hacked and it was removed. So I don't know. We'll see how true that holds. But that's kind of the breakdown here. And we'll share a chart in this video that breaks all this down for you guys, or in the notes below if you want to check it out there as a resource. But I just seen a lot of confusion about, everybody thinks that one blockchain is going to be the main piece of how Swift, moves from this Web 2 to Web 3 world. And I think it's going to be a partnership and integration between these three separate pieces for different reasons. Hedera, the XRPL, and Chainlink to be able to settle tokenized securities and other financial transactions, and Nostro Vostro, which we didn't go over. So Nostro Vostro, just so you guys are aware, it's $27 trillion that are locked up in counterparty bank accounts globally to be able to settle these transactions for Swift. And Nostro Vostro is Latin for yours and ours, and it basically states that it's our money held at a counterparty's bank to be able to settle these transactions. And that's why it takes 2 or 3 days, and there's a lot of frictions and a bunch of other stuff to be able to settle transactions globally, and why this is such a priority for Swift to be able to compete with Ripple. There you have it. Here's all the things that you would need to know for Swift to be able to adopt blockchain technology to be able to settle cross-border payments and other financial transactions. If you found value in this video, please comment below. Let me know what you think. Is it just going to be one blockchain that ends up winning? Is it going to be Chainlink? Is it Hedera? Is it the XRPL? Can one of them do it all? Or is it going to be an amalgamation with the three? Or are they just going to work with Corda and kind of push those to the side, even though they've announced partnerships? Like, subscribe, and we will see you on the next one.